In April 2025, Cindy and I transited the Panama Canal on the luxurious Silver Moon. Join us for our highlights and overview of this transit. From the Atlantic to the Pacific, north to south, through the Gatun Locks, Pedro Miguel Lock, and the Miraflores Locks. Finally out under the Bridge of the Americas. Along the way, lush green tropical trees and landmarks, navigation aids. Here are the ships entering the three locks of the Gatun Locks. You can see the water being pumped from the upper locks into the lower lock. Equalize the level for us to get in. Took about 2 hours to get through these three locks here. Once the level was equalized, we'd start moving forward. Ship used its own propulsion to actually move through the locks. You can see on each side there those silver locomotive type things. Those are called mules. They're actually on a cog railway. There's three on each side, forward, midships, and aft. Their job is to keep the ship centered within the lock because there's very little room on either side. This footage is sped up 2,000%, so it doesn't take the full 2 hours to get through. Once in, the gates behind us closed, started pumping water in. Here's another view Cindy got of the mule and the incline it went up to. There's a picture of us, selfie at this point in the locks. Prove we were actually there. Once the level's equalized with the next middle lock, go ahead and move forward in. See that other ship that's headed northbound. Gone through most of the canal already. Just waiting to do that final lock on its way out to the Atlantic. Another picture Cindy got showing just how close the side of the ship is to the lock wall. Same space on either side. Again, the aft gate's closed. Start pumping water in, get us up. Picture of our ship, the Silver Moon by Silversea, courtesy of the Panama Canal Authority webcam. Again, once equalized with the upper lock, open up the gates, move on forward. Now there are viewing bleachers there by the locks for local tourists and anyone who wants to watch ships going by. May have noticed them as we went by, just big bleachers. Another set, bigger viewing platform over by the Miraflores Locks. It's closer to Panama City, so they get a lot more people watching. Been a lot of talk in the last couple of years about the lack of rain they've had and having to reduce the amount of traffic. Oh, and here's the picture of the distance markers to each gate. The pilots use for reference. That is in feet, not meters. Panama still uses imperial system for measuring. That's why I say, talking about the lack of rain last several years, the rain has increased this year, so they're back to normal operations. Narrator on the transit there was talking about some years they actually have too much rain and they worry about getting too much water and overflowing the lock gates. So they actually have a couple spillways along the canal to let extra water run off. There's been a couple years they've had to have all the gates open there to let water out, but they're talking about adding an additional reservoir to make sure that they have enough water for the drought years that seem to be happening more and more frequently. Once out of the Gatun Locks, you enter Gatun Lake. From there, we'll go to the Culebra Cut, which is a narrow section and have some steep banks at places. They have frequent lock slides. They're constantly dredging, maintaining that area. And that's why the canal is not at sea level all the way across, because it's just too much digging and a lot of landslides filling in. The French tried that, failed miserably, so the U.S. came in, took over, and decided, hey, let's just build some locks and raise this up, make a big lake, make things a lot easier. Here's a train. Train tracks run along parallel to the canal. Once we got the Pedro Miguel lock, we had to wait for a tugboat that was coming up into the lake. And you see it here, once it got equalized, come out, get out of our way so we can move on in. Now on the Pacific or southern end, the three locks are not all right close to each other like at the Gatun Locks. First you come to the Pedro Miguel lock, and then you have a mile, 2 miles or so till you get to the Miraflores Locks. So they're a little bit offset from each other. All throughout the transit, members of the ship's crew coming out to take a look. Novel experience for them also. Here you can see they're letting the water out to lower us. There's a picture courtesy of the Panama Authority webcam of us in the Pedro Miguel Locks. But we're coming back down, getting closer to sea level. You can see people going across on the gates there. It's the only way they have to get from one side to the other. Once the gates are open, they can't get across. Here's a good close-up showing someone going across on the gates. They do have warning signals to let people know the gates are about to open, because there's no room for them once the gates open and get up underneath the walls of the locks. Now, you are required to take a Panama Canal pilot and line handlers on board. This is the one place in the world where the captain has to give up total control of the ship to the Panama Canal pilot. If something happened, the captain would not be held responsible. It's all on the pilot. Any place else in the world, a pilot is simply an advisor, and the captain still is responsible for his ship. You can see up ahead of us that car carrier that we've been following, having a little bit of trouble with the wind. So that tugboat that we had to wait for earlier, they have those stationed throughout the canal, waiting just in case the ship has any kinds of trouble. So you can see here that car carrier has a couple of tugboats helping it fight off the wind that's trying to twist it around as it tries to get lined up for the Miraflores Locks. There were a couple places where they had to send line handlers from the locks themselves out on rowboats to get the lines from the mules over to the line handlers on the ship. All right, coming in now, getting ready for the Miraflores Locks, the last set of 2 locks before we exit out to the Pacific Ocean. The mules getting set up ready for us. That car carrier a little bit ahead of us. We were actually scheduled to go in behind the car carrier on the right-hand side of the lock, but because of their little slowdown with the wind and the lack of other ships coming the other way, they sent us almost parallel to it, a little bit behind. You can also see a couple sailboats, a catamaran and a small sailboat next to it in front of the car carrier there. They also have to take a Panama Canal pilot and line handlers. So it's not a cheap proposition for pleasure boats either, but I believe it's prorated based on the length of the vessel. And here's another selfie of us here in the Miraflores Locks and a picture of the ship, courtesy of the Panama Canal Authority webcam. On our port side there, probably saw coming in, was the bleachers I mentioned earlier, where they have tourists come in, watch ships come by. Some ships don't do a full canal transit, so people do a tour going out, get to watch that way. Picture the lock gates and their partially open position, so you can get a close up, see what they look like. Not sure what all the holes were there for. There goes the sailboats out of the other lock, followed by the car carrier. And we get equalized, our gates open up, and we can start working our way out behind them into the next lock. I don't think I mentioned, these are the old locks. Panama Canal has 2 sets of locks. These are the old original locks built by the Americans back early 1900s. Recently, the Panama Canal Authority has built a second set, larger locks, for bigger ships. They're off to the side. Don't have any good video or pictures of them. I tried, it just didn't come out. But once we get out of this set of locks, we'll be going past Panama City and off underneath the Bridge of Americas and headed out to the Pacific Ocean. All right, the other ships are out of the way. We're equalized, gates open, and we're headed out of Miraflores Locks. Over at the viewing stands there at Miraflores, they had some local folk dancers there performing for the people watching, waiting for ships to come through. As we exit, we cast off our lines for the mules. And after that, line handlers will get off on a small boat, comes up alongside. They'll take off. Pilot won't get off till after we're past the Bridge of Americas. Little ways up here yet. Note for mariners, boaters, yachtsmen. The Panama is the IALA B, which means red right return on the buoyage system. So coming in from the Atlantic, red buoys on our right the entire way till we get to Miraflores Locks. Then it's red right return from the Pacific. So you notice the red buoys now on our left-hand side. Coming up on the right-hand side are the big dock facilities that certain politicians seem to be all upset about here in the States, causing all kinds of concern. See up ahead of us, that car carrier's going underneath the Bridge of Americas, which is part of the Pan American Highway. It goes all the way from Alaska down to the southern tip of South America. Except for a few short miles in Panama where it's just too swampy and they were not able to build any roads or bridges. If you like this, please like, subscribe, hit notification bell, and thank you for watching.